So at a high level, now that we've talked through kind of some of the fundamental concepts of marketing, now let's talk about how you can put it into practice for your business. So again, if you'll remember, what marketing is about is really it's taking your brand, who you are, your brand identity, what you stand for, what you want to achieve. It's communicating that to your audience or your audiences. It's using different channels, different communications places where you can communicate or spread that message with the ultimate goal of achieving a business objective. And so marketing brings together those four elements, and it's really important to develop a strategy around that and then also develop a process or a system that'll allow you to go execute your marketing. At Percolate, when we think about the marketing lifecycle or the marketing process, we break it down into about 6 discrete steps. And this is how we see a marketing team working overall. So the first step is obviously just planning, right? Like you don't want to just go out there and do things without planning, but particularly with marketing, when you're thinking about advertising, when you're thinking about producing events, you want to make sure that you have a plan or a real schedule. And this could involve, scheduling social media posts. It could involve, buying media or buying a billboard and then creating the creative around it that's going to go on that billboard. But you want to have a plan. And most importantly, you want to have a plan that syncs up different elements or different aspects of your brand, right? You don't want your PR team talking about one thing when your advertising group is going off and doing something else. Or you don't want your website saying one thing when you have an Eventbrite that you've set up for your website and that Eventbrite page says something else. You want a consistent brand across all your communications channels. And so that's what makes planning and collaboration and alignment and teamwork really, really important in marketing. Once you have your plan, you want to start to go into creative development. Creative development is really step 2. That's the process of developing a brief and then saying, from this brief, here's what we're going to go make, here's what we're going to go do, here's what we're going to go say. And at Percolate, when we talk about a brief, what we really mean is a creative brief. The easiest way to think about a creative brief, I think in my sense, is to really think about it as a problem statement that's going to inspire the team or the other people who have to go solve the problem to come up with a good solution. And so typically your brief is going to lay out important elements or building blocks of your brand. It's going to talk about, what does the brand exist for? What are the important elements or attributes of the brand to communicate? Who is the brand trying to communicate to, right? You can think of the brief as a problem statement or a requirements doc that you'll then develop a solution against. Once you know what you're going to make, obviously you can go to step 3, and that's production. Production is the actual process of creating your marketing. There's lots of different elements or different ways or types of creative that you can produce in marketing, ranging all the way from full TV commercials down to blog posts and tweets and sort of social media copy. And so creative production can really run this very, very broad spectrum. Some projects may take only a few minutes or hours, or in the case of a really large marketing campaign, maybe even months or longer. Once you've produced your work, then you've got to distribute it. And what distribution is about, it's about taking your creative or taking your content or your message or your story and getting it out to your audience, right? So you can think about, and what we often would say in marketing is talk about a distribution channel. And you could say, okay, social media is a distribution channel for our story, or email is a distribution channel, or PR and journalism is a distribution channel. And so as a marketing department and as a business, you have lots of different distribution channels where you might tell different elements or different variations of your story while still wanting to maintain, again, this kind of consistent whole that reinforces your brand's mission, your brand's value, your purpose, and what you're trying to do. And so as a marketer, once you've produced everything, you're then going to go through the act of distributing it across all of the different channels that you're active on, with the goal of distributing your message in the most cost-effective way to as many people as possible, right? You want to get as much reach on your message as possible, ideally with the most relevant people. Once you've distributed your message, once you've started communicating, the next step is really around monitoring or listening. right? We talk about monitoring or listening as, I guess, in some ways kind of gathering feedback or trying to understand how your customers or how your marketing audience responds to your messaging. And this could take the form of, monitoring your Twitter feed and seeing how people are talking about your brand. This could involve maybe competitive intelligence or enterprise listening in terms of going out and looking and seeing how are people talking about your brand, how are they talking about competitors, how are your competitors responding to your marketing messaging. Or it could involve things like media monitoring, right? Using something like Google News or Google Search to see, are journalists talking about your brand? Are you getting press coverage? Are you getting media attention? How are people talking about you? Are they talking about you in the way that you would want them to talk about you? Or are they misunderstanding your marketing message? Or they maybe talking about your product in a way that isn't right or is incorrect, right? There's lots of different ways that you can kind of listen to what's going on in the market and understand how your marketing messaging is either resonating or not working. And finally, once you have your message out there, once you're starting to get feedback, the final step in marketing really comes down to analysis. It's taking the data and the feedback that you're able to gather and using that to drive insights around, is your marketing working? How can you make it better? And what new messaging will communicate and grow your brand and drive sales even more effectively than before. And this is actually one of the most important elements of marketing as a whole. Is it's important to think about each of these steps as different finite areas or tasks that either you or your team are going to go do and you want to do really well. But it's also really important to think about the overall system and think about all of these different steps as one closed loop, right? Because if you don't understand or you can't get good data and analytics on how your marketing is produced, you may not know whether the tweet or the post or the image or the ad or the billboard that you created is actually working. And so you want to be able to gather data about the previous steps as much as possible, so then your team or your analytics manager or whoever sort of gathering or evaluating your performance results can understand not just how you're doing, but what the opportunities are to optimize it and make it even better.